When we go into school communities to teach resilience, it's of course really helpful to talk about this seemingly abstract concept in really concrete and actionable ways. So one angle that we can take is to talk about our nervous system and to talk about zones of regulation. When our nervous system is regulated, we're operating from what we call the resilient zone. And you know you're in the resilient zone when you have an internal felt sense of calm, of wellness, of inner ease. And when you're in the state of being, you have a pretty big window of tolerance for stressors. Let's look at an example. We're going to use this graphic to track a person's stress levels over time at work. Let's say you show up to work and your nervous system is regulated. You're in the resilient zone, you feel calm, and you have a sense of inner ease, as shown on the left-hand side of this graphic. But partway into your day, a stressor arises, and you start feeling more anxious, worried, stressed. Your nervous system is now in a state of hyperactivation. It's escalated. But because you started from a calm, regulated place, you had a pretty big window of tolerance for that moderate stressor. It was unlikely to push you into a state of fight or flight, or of intense reactivity. And since you have a resilience practice, once that stressor passes, you know how to skillfully re-regulate your nervous system back down to that resilient zone, to that sense of calm and inner ease once again. And that's the resilience dynamic, right? Touching into something that's challenging and then skillfully recovering. The problem is when we have chronic stress or repeated exposure to micro or macro traumas, our nervous system's baseline is hyperactivation. That's our starting point. So when we experience that exact same pattern of stress at work, the same stressor event, but from a baseline of escalation or hyperactivation, you can see that that stressor is much more likely to push us up and over the edge into a fight or flight response. And many teachers have reflected to me that in the classroom, it sometimes feels like their reactivity goes from 0 to 60 out of nowhere, right, into that fight or flight response, into being reactive rather than responsive. And I would argue to them that they're actually going from 45 to 60, not 0 to 60, as a result of their baseline level of escalation. So one of our big goals in resilience training is empowering people with the tools that they need to retrain their nervous system to a new baseline, a new norm, so that they can access on a regular basis those feelings of calm, inner ease, wellness, so that they have a wider window of tolerance for stressors, so that they know how to recover skillfully after a stressor arises. And there are a wide variety of tools that people can use. Different people resonate with different strategies, but in the end, they generally fall into 4 categories: self-awareness, self-care, the cultivation of safety, and skillful relationship building. And resilience doesn't get developed overnight. We don't get to rewire our nervous systems overnight, but with repetition and practice, it is something we all have access to.